Juggalos and Juggalettes, it's your big homie Big Ian coming at you live and direct for a new interview for Faygoluvers.net. Today I'm sitting down with David Wimble of the Indie Bible. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
David, far be it from me to kind of take over and I don't want to explain your product incorrectly. So first off, why don't you just dive in and tell us who you are and your relation to the Indie Bible?
Okay, well, I started out as a musician. In 1999, I recorded a CD, and I was working in high tech at the time, and it was a dream of mine to record a CD. And while I was at work, you have to remember this is 1999, so we're going back 14 years. The internet was very young, and I was kind of poking around, wondering if there's any places that I could, once the CD was finished, if any places I could send it to. And I found out there were some college stations online. There was a lot of different review sites. Most of them were what you would call kind of throwaway websites, like the some of you that are older would remember the old Yahoo, AOL, or Lycos websites that you would go to, Homestead, and you could. It's kind of like today's blog. These are like the early blogs. You could set them up for free, but the problem was when you went to them, you got blasted with all these ads. So there'd be all these pop-up ads, and they ran really slow because we're still talking about dial-up back then, pretty much. So I searched around, and I found a bunch of places to send my music to, and was just waiting to get my CD back, finished and mastered and whatnot. And then, as often happens, there was turmoil, and I won't go into details, except that the producer kind of basically went out on a coke binge and held the music that had been recorded hostage, and I had to, get some money together and buy that back, and it was hellish. It went on for a long time. I finally got one CD, all nicely done, and then I started pumping it out to all these different places that I kind of gathered, and there was like several hundred radio stations. There was some of these review websites, different places like the early stores like CD Baby. There were lots of them around, and MP3 websites. MP3.com was around back then. But then what happened is instead of the band kind of getting together and going out and building momentum, we actually went backwards, and we ended up there was just nothing left. There was no band members. There was just me, and I invested all this money. So I thought at the time I had to make a decision. I could either try and build another band, which would be costly and time-consuming, and there's no guarantee that same kind of crazy things weren't going to happen again. Or I thought as I was kind of going through the internet, I hadn't seen anything that was kind of like a map of how musicians can find all these different resources on the internet, and I just spent hundreds and hundreds of hours finding these places, and I decided the practical thing to do was to go with this directory and just give it a shot. I wasn't an entrepreneur by any means. It was just mostly done out of fear, and then I also just decided that if I wanted this little directory I was putting together to succeed, I would have to cover all styles of music. It couldn't just be for my particular style of music. It had to be everything from the most extreme to the calmest possible music. And that's what I did. So I did that, and the first edition of the Indie Bible was spiral bound. It was a photocopied book, but it got great reviews. I passed it around. I made some friends with different authors, like Dale Schwartz and Jerry Goldstein, who have written like classic books for independent musicians, and then people like Derek Sivers at CD Baby thought fondly of it. We had a great partnership that still exists to this day. So that's what I ended up doing. So although my passion is to write music and perform, this is kind of what I ended up with, and it's been people ask me if I still go out and play and stuff, and there's just no time. There's not even enough time to do what I'm doing now. So that's how the Indie Bible came into being, and the reason it's beneficial to artists is because I still see, when I look at different resources, I still see it through the eyes of a musician. I say, is this something that can help me as a musician? Does it have worth, or is it just something that's kind of cool that really doesn't have any use, but it's kind of neat? So I make sure that it's very practical and helpful information, and that's stood the test of time, and that's where I am today.
Okay, now you've told us kind of how Indie Bible got started. Kind of flesh it out for us as far as what this resource accomplishes, what it encapsulates, all the things it enables aspiring musicians to do.
Well, there's one thing that's consistent across the entire spectrum of the music industry, from the most unknown person you could ever imagine to the most glamorous superstar bands like U2 or Janet Jackson or Lady Gaga. We all need the same things, and that's exposure. And the ways that independent musicians get exposure and famous artists get exposure is the same thing. It's just at a different level. So when a new band comes out, let's say for instance, Lady Gaga comes out with a new album, and she needs, she does radio interviews, she does TV interviews, she gets radio airplay, she does radio spots. Her publicist gets out there, and she tweets and puts stuff on Facebook. Well, it's exactly the same thing for the independent musician. They may be a part-time musician, or they may, be a single parent. But the truth doesn't change that they have to get exposure if they are going to survive. And of course, the one thing I forgot to mention was that they also play live. So the well-known artists will go around on a tour with a lot of gala and press around it. And again, it's no different for someone that's a single parent or someone's just struggling to, put food on the table. But instead of going on a world tour to get exposure, they have to maybe play around the city, maybe a little corner bar or a restaurant. To get interviews, there's so many places now online that you can get interviews, but it's going to be to a small extent. So instead of talking to millions of people on K-Rock or some other station, they'll be talking to a few thousand, sometimes a few hundred. Same with reviews. They'll get reviews in different magazines. They won't get a review in Rolling Stone. They'll do live performances. It won't be on BET. It'll be on maybe a local cable station. But these are things that have to be done. Even the most giant superstars started at some level. They just didn't, sometimes they do kind of, get signed and just skyrocket. But most of the time they pay their dues with local press and local exposure. And that's something that's never going to change. So no matter how fancy technology gets, or social media, or how many millions of blogs there are, the bottom line always is, you're an artist, you're sitting in your room. What you need is exposure, and the channels to get that exposure, they might vary a little bit in the future, but they're always going to be the same. It's live, people hearing it, basically touching all the different senses. So that's what we do, is we say, okay, this is your spectrum as an independent artist. These are possible places that you can get help. We don't list like we have a venue directory as well, so we don't list, the Hollywood Bowl or the Staples Center. There's no sense in doing that. What we do is we list realistic places that independent artists can get exposure, get their airplay, reviews done, play a gig and whatnot.
Okay, now for those who are curious to know, is this an actual, do you guys still print physical hard copies of the book? Do you have, ebook copies? How does that work for anybody who might be interested in getting one?
Well, there was, as we started many years ago, it was all softbound, and then I was kind of hesitant to have the ebook version, which we've had for many years too, because of course, once you get into digital, it's people can send it to all their friends, but it's a decision I made to do that, and it was worth it. I know there's a lot of borrowed copies out there. I have no problem with that. I've downloaded a few movies in my time, so I can't really stand on a soapbox and complain about that. But a few years ago, when it became really apparent with a lot of the major magazines and newspapers kind of struggling, that press, print was dying, and of course the reason that this was happening is because of advertising. And once advertisers start pulling out of anything, then that entity, whatever it is, doesn't, it's not going to last too long.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of saw the changes. It was a lot harder to sell ads, and my partner and I just, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, we just said, okay, it's time to make the switch. So what we did is what people have been asking us for years is we still have the ebook that has the hypertext link, so you could just click on place you want to go to and go to the website, or click on an email and you email is sent to that person. But you can't sort a PDF file, and you can't really store any information. So we went online, and we created an online database that has all the same information, and we update it almost daily. And now people can search if they want to look for PR services in France, or if they want hip hop stations in Georgia. They can get that in a couple of seconds. They just do the search, put in the search criteria, and it just comes up, and they can save that and sort it and whatnot. So it's a very powerful tool. I'm kind of a little bit old school. I miss the old softbound version, as many people do, but this is the way of the future. So we're just going with it and doing the best we can with that.
Okay, now do you have any sort of special deals or promotions or anything new with Indie Bible that you're kind of promoting right now?
Well, 14 years. I've seen some pretty good economic times. When I started, the economy was great, and then there was all sorts of little kind of things would come up, like a war or 9/11, that just the economy kind of would take a kind of a step back, and then it would recover and come back. But these last few years, about the last, what's it been now, 4 or 5 years, that the economy's taken this kind of obvious downswing, that was really difficult. And we, like many businesses, were just surviving just by the skin of our teeth. And we did a promotion with a company that was kind of like a Groupon type company for musicians, and we did a promotion. We had this ridiculous price. We put all our directories, all 3 of them, plus an additional copy of the Indie Bible for $60. And that's like, I think it works out to 20% of the cost. It's like $60 for $320 worth of resources, and it did kind of okay. But then last year we usually do a yearly promotion with CD Baby, and we said, okay, this time let's promote this kind of Groupon thing we had again, and it just did really good. And talking with my partner, we said, well, let's make this. This is the reality of the economy. People are having a hard time. I mean, I get musicians and artists telling me all the time, and I'm sure you do too, that their priority right now is putting food on the table, and that's not an exaggeration. That's just the way it is. There's been thousands or millions, I don't know how many layoffs, and venues are closing. So there's more artists, but there's less places to play, and it's very highly competitive, and it's kind of a scary situation. So we decided, we're going to make this permanent, and it's just, call it what you want. I call it a recession buster, but we're just, we've taken all of our directories, so the venue directories, and the Indie Bible, and then the Indie Bible online, and people can buy it for $59.95, and that's going to be permanent.
Okay, now run off the list of links where anybody who wants to learn more or wants to get their copy of the Indie Bible, just any Facebook, Twitter, website links, where can people find you?
The best place would just be to go to indiebible.com, and we have links to everything from there. So we have links to our venue directory, we have links to the online version, to the bundle package that I just talked about, and then to our Facebook and Twitter pages there. So I would just say to people that are interested, go to indiebible.com, INDIEBIBLE.com, and they can find out all the information they want.
David, that's all the questions I got for you today. Is there anything else you'd like to say to all the people listening to this right now?
No, just drop by. I mean, if you've recorded some music, check it out, because you definitely won't regret it. One of the things we're facing, we're basically the same as artists face. It's just exposure. You think you've been around 14 years, and we have all sorts of great reviews, but you just can't ever reach everybody. So we're always having new people drop by and say, "This is amazing. I wish I'd found out about it a few years ago." So I just recommend any listeners that are artists that have recorded some music to check it out, and they can actually test the online version out for free and just kind of see what it consists of.
Okay, well, David, thank you again for taking the time to do this interview. And Juggalos, Juggalettes, this has been David Wimble and Big Ian. We're out.